Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today, we are going to have a wonderful presentation by Dr. Natalia Muguiro. And after Natalia's presentation, I will be sharing some important information with you regarding administrative issues and enrollment for 2024. Dr. Natalia Muguiro holds a PhD in English language and applied linguistics from the University of Birmingham and an MA in applied linguistics and a TESOL from the University of Leicester. She's a lecturer at Universidad Nacional de La Pampa, where she graduated as an English language teacher and completed a BA in educational science. She is an accredited researcher in the areas of corpus linguistics, English for academic purposes, and creative writing. She has published her work extensively and has given academic presentations in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, USA, UK, and Ireland. She's the owner and head of Enjoy It, Escuela de Inglés in Santa Rosa, La Pampa. Today, Natalia will be talking and giving the presentation, Writing for B2 First, Boost Your Students' Skills in an Effective and Why Not Fun Way. Succeeding in the writing part of the Cambridge English First and First for Schools is usually a challenging endeavor for students and teachers alike. During this session, we will try to demystify the idea that this is such a difficult task by tackling key concepts of the assessment subscale language from a more practical perspective. While it is clear that teachers are able to offer students abundant practice on grammar and vocabulary, integrating such knowledge to the development of writing skills is not always successfully achieved. A last issue, and perhaps the most important one, will also be addressed: how to make writing fun. Get ready to boost your students' writing skills in an effective way, and why not enjoyable way. So, Natalia, we would like to listen to you now.
Right. Can you see me? Can you hear me right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to share this webinar with you all, and I want to thank Buenos Aires Open Center for the invitation. The title of the webinar is Writing for B2 First, Boost Your Students' Skills in an Effective and Why Not Fun Way. So the focus will be placed on first certificate for schools, but the proposal can be adapted to other Cambridge exams. So this is our agenda for today. I will divide the presentation into two parts. The first part will be more theoretical in nature, and after a short break, we will move into more practical stuff. I'm going to start by talking about aspects we need to consider before planning our writing lessons, and this is what we call the teacher essentials. These are the documents we have available on the Cambridge English website, and going from more general to specific, I'm particularly referring to the handbook for teachers, where you will find useful information about absolutely every aspect of the exam, as well as 2 complete sample tests with feedback. Then we also have the teaching tips booklet. Here we have general tips and ideas for every component, plus useful strategies to help students deal with different aspects and several links to other teaching resources. Moving to specific resources for writing, we have the Assessing Writing for Cambridge English Qualifications Guide for Teachers. This is a wonderful resource. It's full of practical tips and real examples on how to apply the assessment scales. And finally, we have the writing checklist. This includes a summary of the assessment criteria and useful questions for each writing type. So the language here has been somehow simplified so that students can also use the checklist themselves. I will be making reference to those resources throughout the presentation. If you don't have them, remember you can download them from the Cambridge website. Once we know all important aspects about the writing component, it's time to go deeper into the assessment scales. I'm sure you all already know. I won't go into detail here, but we'll just have a quick reminder that these are the 4 subscales. First of all, we have content, which focuses on how well the candidate has fulfilled the task. In other words, if they had done what they were asked to do. Then we have communicative achievement, which focuses on how appropriate the writing is for the task and whether the candidate has used the appropriate register. Organization comes after that, which focuses on the way the candidate puts together the piece of writing. In other words, if it is logical and ordered. And finally, language, which focuses on vocabulary and grammar. This includes the range of language as well as how accurate it is. So answers, as you know, are marked on each subscale from 0 to 5. And here we have the 4 subscales with details on what candidates are expected to achieve in order to receive one or the other bands when writing. In the Assessing Writing Guide, you have plenty of useful examples and explanations on how to apply those scales. Well, after this brief introduction, I'm going to refer to a kind of problematic issue we usually face. When the exam results are released, we see that many times our students get rather low scores in the writing part in comparison with the other skills. And I'm sure that most of you will agree with me on that. And as we all know, we cannot see our students' answers and we cannot see the feedback given to them in the exams. So we need to somehow hypothesize about reasons for those lower scores based on what we do have access to. And what we have are basically 2 types of writing tasks to explore. On the one hand, we have the texts our students produce when practicing for the exams. I mean, the writing assignments we give them. And on the other, we also have the sample writing answers available in the official preparation materials. So in order to find out possible reasons why students get lower scores for writing, I started by analyzing the feedback given to the samples available in these preparation materials. As there are 8 sample writing answers with feedback in each of these books, plus 12 more sample bands in the handbook, I collected a total of 52 sample tasks with 208 score bands to analyze. So I classified them according to the score given to each subscale because I wanted to find out which were the subscales that received the lowest scores. And this is what I found. We see here that content, for example, is a subscales with more bands 5 given, and no bands 2 or 3 at all. This is the blue bar there. We see that communicative achievement and organization receive mostly bands 3 and 4. But perhaps the most important finding, because this is what I wanted to know, is that language receives more bands 2 than any other subscale, almost to 20% of them. So from this, we can hypothesize that language is a subscale that deserves more attention. So I tried to think of a visual metaphor that could illustrate this trend, and the image that came to my mind was a popular game known as Snakes and Ladders. I'm sure most of you know it. That's a board game where you have to place a counter on the start space and then take it in turns to roll the dice and move your counter forward until the exit. So if your counter lands at the bottom of a ladder, you can move up to the top of the ladder. If a counter lands on the head of a snake, you must lie down to the bottom of the snake. And the first player to get to the exit is the winner. So in this case, we can imagine that the start space is band 2 or 3, and that the exit space is band 5. And we can also imagine 4 counters, one for content, one for communicative achievement, one for organization, and one for language. I feel that the progress students make in order to move from band 3 to band 5 in content occurs quite faster than the progress they make for communicative achievement and organization, for example. But what is most noticeable is that the progress students make for language is usually the slowest. And this is so because of the more challenging path they have to go through. The path to achieve progress in content is more linear, more straightforward. I mean, once students understand that they have to include all the information asked for in the task, they are able to achieve it without problems. However, they have to struggle much harder to achieve progress in language, as the path seems to have more obstacles to avoid and many more challenges to overcome. So that's why today we're going to focus on the language subscale in order to see how we can help students overcome those challenges. I would like to revise first a couple of terms from the glossary, which are relevant for the understanding of the subscale, especially those connected with vocabulary, grammar, and range. So for vocabulary, we have two types. We have everyday vocabulary, which refers to vocabulary that comes up in common situations of a non-technical nature in the relevant domain. And less common lexis refers to vocabulary items that appear less often in the relevant domain. These items often help to express ideas more succinctly and more precisely. As for grammatical forms, we have simple grammatical forms and complex ones. Simple forms are words, phrases, basic tenses, simple clauses. More complex grammatical forms are longer and more complex items, such as noun clauses, relative and adverb clauses, subordination, passive form, infinitives, verb patterns, modal forms, tense contrasts, etc. And then we have range. Range refers to the variety of words and grammatical forms a candidate uses. So range affects both vocabulary and grammar. At higher levels, candidates will make increasing use of a great variety of words, fixed phrases, collocations, and grammatical forms. Okay, now we will focus on the differences as regards requirements that students need in order to receive Band 5 in the language subscale. We know that such candidate uses a range of vocabulary, including less common lexis, appropriately. He or she uses a range of simple and complex grammatical forms with control and flexibility, and occasional errors may be present but do not impede communication. As regards vocabulary, we see how the inclusion of less common lexis is highlighted, while for grammar, we see that both simple and complex forms are required. And we also notice that for both, we have the issue of range beforehand. So we need a range of vocabulary and we need a range of grammatical forms. Just to give you an example, perhaps you have students who uses a term such as acid rain, carbon footprint, or energy efficient in a text about environmental issues, but these are the only three less common expressions he or she repeats once and again. So he will use less common lexis, but the range will be limited. Or for example, students use mixed conditionals and passive voice, but these are the only two structures throughout the whole text. Again, they will have complex grammar form, but the range will be limited. Another important aspect to consider here is a distinction between what kind of language students have to use, whether this is less common lexis or simple and complex grammar forms, and how do they have to use that language. We know that students should use vocabulary appropriately, as well as grammar with control and flexibility, and we also know that occasional errors may be present but do not impede communication. Today, however, we are going to focus on the what part only. Why? Well, because I believe that sometimes we tend to give a lot of importance to correcting language mistakes without distinguishing whether those mistakes appear when students use everyday language or when they attempt to use less common lexis. And we also tend to give a lot of importance to correcting grammar mistakes without noticing whether these mistakes appear when they use simple forms or when they try more elaborate structures. That is, we always tend to focus on correcting what is wrong everywhere, instead of helping students develop skills to use richer, more varied, more elaborate grammar and vocabulary, despite mistakes, of course. And I think that this is a key factor that makes a difference between getting Band 5 or getting Band 3 in the language subscale. Now, if we read the rubrics for Band 3, we find that students are supposed to use a range of everyday vocabulary with occasional inappropriate use of less common lexis. So what's the main difference with Band 5? That in Band 5, the use of less common lexis must be included. Then we know that students have to use a range of simple and some complex grammatical forms with a good degree of control. Again, what's the difference with Band 5? That in Band 5, there must be simple and complex grammatical forms. So if a candidate doesn't have a single mistake, but he or she uses only everyday vocabulary and simple grammatical forms, there won't be any chance for them to get Band 5. However, if the candidate uses a range of everyday and less common lexemes and a range of simple and complex grammar forms with occasional errors, it is quite likely that they still receive a Band 5 or a Band 4 at least. If we go back to the teacher's essentials, we will see how this is also highlighted. For instance, the very first tip in the teaching tips document says, encourage students to use a range of language. This is the very first tip. If they make mistakes, they will receive marks for effort as long as mistakes do not impede communication. Again, first focus on the kind of language to teach, then on how students will use it. If you look at the Assessing Writing Guide for Teachers, where you will find a blank template to download and use when correcting your students' writing, we see that for language, the first question is there a good range of vocabulary and grammar? And then the question about whether there are mistakes or not, or the kind of mistakes there are up here. Finally, in the writing checklist for students, the first 3 questions refer to the type of language to use. Have I used a wide range of vocabulary? Have I avoided repeating the same structure and words, so that is range? Have I used simpler, more complex grammatical forms? Only after that, questions such as, have I correctly used any common phrases which are relevant? Is my use of grammar accurate? Is my spelling accurate? Appear. So before moving on, I would like to refer very briefly to the concepts of accuracy and complexity from the fields of second language acquisition and language teaching. So research has shown that language proficiency is not a unitary construct, but can rather be split into various components. We all know that the assessment of L2 language proficiency was initially based on the traditional 4 skills models, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, with an initial focus on accuracy, defined as the ability to produce target-like and error-free language. In the 1980s, a distinction was made between accurate and fluent language use, with fluency defined as the ability to produce the L2 with native-like rapidity, pausing, hesitation, or reformulation. Complexity was only added as a third component in the 1990s and has been defined as the extent to which the language produced in performing a task is elaborate and varied. So we have an L2 model, which includes complexity, accuracy, and fluency. These are known as the CAF triad, as the 3 principal dimensions of proficiency. What research has pointed out is that complexity, accuracy, and fluency do not develop collinearly in second language acquisition. Instead, they interact in intricate ways, and this interaction is sometimes mutually supportive, but some other times it is somehow competitive. For example, in the writing process, accuracy and complexity always interact. And it is important to make it clear that syntactic and lexical errors are part of the process of second language acquisition. So more complex tasks, and here we'll be talking about cognitive complexity, lead to linguistically more complex language. And errors are thus a prerequisite for L2 development. As the graph claims, I really like this quote, you've got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, meaning that you cannot move from less to more complex language without making mistakes in the middle. So again, if we pay too much attention to accuracy, but we don't help students develop complexity, that interaction will be somehow affected. As I explained before, the focus today will be placed on developing complexity rather than controlling accuracy. We can have another webinar to discuss accuracy in detail, where concepts like written corrected feedback strategies or techniques for error analysis can be explored. Then, when focusing on linguistic complexity, we see that grammatical complexity is distinguished from lexical complexity. Grammatical complexity can be further divided into syntactic and morphological, and within lexical complexity, a distinction is often made between diversity, this is the number of different words, density, which is a proportion of lexical words, and sophistication, which is the number of less frequent words. If you think of the Band 5 language subscale, lexical diversity will refer to range, and lexical sophistication will refer to the presence of less common words. Without getting into that level of theoretical detail, a question that usually arises when we are providing feedback for our students is, do we really know whether a particular word is considered less common lexis or not for the level, or whether a particular grammar form is considered simple or more complex? Or better said, the question is, how do we know? And of course, we know that the target words, phrases, and forms students must learn are those which are presented in the materials we are using, specifically the course books or the trainers or the sample tests. But there is another resource I like a lot, which is a corpus-based tool. That means that it has been created from real texts students have produced under exam conditions. And this is called English Profile. This is not new at all. It is connected with the Common European Framework of Reference, and it basically links what is expected for each level of the framework with what students are able to produce, and it offers many, many, many useful tools for teachers. So let's watch this short video to know more about that.
The Common European Framework of Reference for Languages has given us new ways to learn, teach, and assess foreign languages. But what do the CEFR can-do statements really mean for English language learners? Take this example. A B1 level learner traveling where a particular language is spoken can apparently deal with most situations likely to arise. That's a lot of possible situations. English Profile sets out to describe the specific language that learners need in order to perform the can-do statements in English. A groundbreaking collaboration between some of the world's leading teaching, assessment, and publishing organizations, English Profile draws on years of research using vast collections of language learning data to provide evidence-based answers to the kinds of questions you might have had about the CEFR yourself. Like what language learners typically know at each CEFR level. Isn't a syllabus. Its aim is to provide easy-to-use online resources, English vocabulary profile and the English grammar profile, which allow us to apply the English profile research in curriculum and syllabus design, materials writing, assessment, lesson planning. You can see the English vocabulary profile for yourself right now. Simply subscribe at englishprofile.org. You can look up an individual word or find vocabulary for a specific topic area. You'll see all of the different meanings of a word at each level, with audio and phonemic transcription. Imagine being able to check which words you need to pre-teach from an authentic text, or which meanings of the verb get to focus on with your students, whether they're at A1, B2, or C2 level. The English vocabulary profile, we can do all of this and more. English Profile, what the CEFR means for English.
Okay, so I hope that you could hear the video right, yes? Okay, so once you enter the grammar profile site, you will see that it is divided into into vocabulary profile and grammar profile. I will show you a little bit, but of course that then you need to explore it on your own because you can do many, many useful things. Grammar profile allows users to select from many options the grammar forms we want to deal with, and have a range of forms classified according to the Common European Framework levels. So for instance, I selected adjectives. We also have adverbs, clauses, conjunctions, determiners, etc. And I clicked on B2 level only, and I found a lot of different forms. If I select also B1 and C1, I can also compare the forms across the 3 levels. You can also see examples for each case and even apply more filters. For example, within adjectives, we have combining, comparing, modifying, superlatives, position, etc. So I applied a filter for combining, and I clicked all the levels from A1 to C1. And for example, I learned that combining 2 adjectives with and is an A1 form. Then combining them with but is an A2 form. That 2 adjectives separated by a comma used before a noun is a B1 form, and that whole phrase is modifying a noun are typical of B2 forms. Then, when you open the English vocabulary profile, you will see that you can enter a particular word and get all the information you want. Or you can select the level and also the topic area, for example, animals, arts and media, body and health. The useful thing is that you can select all the levels you want together, or you can select by topic or by parts of speech. For example, here I selected adjectives, but instead of selecting only B2, I clicked on B1 and C1 to see what adjectives are commonly used both at the lower and higher levels. As I didn't select any topic in particular, I got lots of adjectives. Then if you click on details, you have real examples, uses, forms. But the tool I like the most from vocabulary profile is the one called Text Inspector, which can be accessed to from the English profile, but also as an independent resource. As we can read, teachers and students can use this page to check the difficulty of any text by showing its content in terms of the framework levels or words and described in the English vocabulary profile, a free online resource. The English vocabulary profile classifies words by level according to the meaning, as some senses of a word may be learned at a higher level than others. Text Inspector chooses the lowest level sense by default, but the user can click on each word in the result display and select a different sense if necessary. Texts are limited to 500 words per document, so if you want to insert larger documents, you need to subscribe. And of course, although you can use this tool to analyze the text you are given for reading, for example, what I did was to use the text students wrote as practice, and once you copy and paste those texts and you click on the Start Workflow button, after 10 seconds, you will see something like this. Every single word from the text has been automatically classified according to the level it belongs to, taking account form, but also use. So when you see something like this with a kind of high proportion of A1 or A2 words, don't panic. This doesn't mean that your student needs to sit for A2 key again. Because most of the words labeled as A1 or A2 are non-content words, such as articles, prepositions, auxiliaries, etc. But what we must pay attention to are the B2 and C1 words, because they are probably the less common lexemes we are looking for. And then we also need to pay attention to the unlisted words, because those are misspelled words or words that take capital letters students forgot to use, or proper nouns written in Spanish, and the like. Finally, if you subscribe to Text Inspector, you have access to a scorecard, which tells you the overall level of the text. This is very similar to what Write and Improve shows when feedback is given on student texts. So I know that this kind of analysis might be time-consuming, but it is really useful, mainly when we want to know the starting point as regards the language level of students' texts. So a very good idea is to create small corpora of students' texts and start scrutinizing them in the light of tools like this, so as to know the kind of grammar and vocabulary they are able to use, but also make judgments towards the target-like grammar and vocabulary forms that are expected to use to fulfill the requirements of the writing task. Well, I think it's time to recap a little bit now in order to move forward. So far, we've said that the first thing we should do is to familiarize ourselves with the assessment scales. Then we decided to focus on one of the subscales, language in this case, because it seems is the one candidates usually get lower scores compared with the other three subscales. And we also decided to focus more on the kind of language students are supposed to use, which should be more complex and more varied, instead of focusing only on how accurate that language is or how many mistakes they have. In particular, we noticed that the main difference between Band 3 and Band 5 is related to the range of less common lexes and the range of simple and complex grammatical forms. Then in order to know which is that language, we need to be able to identify it. Of course, we have the target language suggested in the course books or whatever materials we are using, but we also have some useful tools such as English Profile that gives us a chance to explore our students' texts in much more detail. So the following step now is to find ways to help students boost their language use. But once again, the big question is how to do it. And why is it a big question? Because we have tons of available resources and sometimes we don't know very well where to start from. So I also think that the problem doesn't lie only on how to select materials to practice grammar and vocabulary for writing, but on how to integrate them effectively into writing. And I'm sure that most of you will agree. So the idea is to start by narrowing down the scope so as to dig deeper into different text types and tasks, and choose only one text type, one task. Then we cannot forget to revise or pre-teach other subscales for that specific text type and for that specific task. And finally, focus on the language subscale. So that would be an example. For instance, from the email, story, essay, article, and review, we will choose only the review first. Then from the typical tasks we can find for reviews, we will choose to write a review about a concert students have attended. We also have reviews of a website, shop, film, book, restaurant, holiday. Then we have to think about the particular aspects of the other subscales that we need to pre-teach. I don't know, writing the outline, deciding which information will be included in each paragraph, thinking about connectors to link ideas, etc., etc. And finally, focus on language. More precisely, on the kind of grammar and the kind of vocabulary students will need. And for that, we can design what I call mini lessons, mini units, focused on specific grammar and vocabulary aspects for that particular written task. So I will show you just one example, but you can do it with any kind of task and any kind of text. Yes, so here we have a mini unit about a review for a concert. First of all, we have the task. Write a review about a music concert you've attended, describe the event, say what you liked and didn't like, say whether you would recommend the concert to others. And if we go to the description of the text type in the teaching tips booklet, it says a review is usually written for an English language magazine or website. Description, explanation, what we will need to describe the event, given positive and negative opinions, we will need that for saying what you like and didn't like, and recommendations, you will recommend the concert to others, are key functions for this task, as well as the use of a range of adjectives. So we already have all the information we need in the booklet, in the teaching tips parts, so we know what we are expecting from students. And then we have to decide which grammar to include and which vocabulary to include. Based on those functions, we know students will need to develop in order to write their reviews. I thought of comparative, superlative, positive, and negative adjectives, of course, in order to describe and give positive and negative opinions. Past tenses combinations, because the students attended the concert, so everything will include past tenses, conditionals in order to think about recommendations, modal verbs also for recommendations, and many others. And as regards vocabulary, we need to choose the topic areas which are related to that particular object or event, in this case being reviewed, such as entertainment, music, going out, emotions, festivals and celebrations, clothes, etc. So once we have organized the content of our mini unit, we need to decide what kind of activities we are going to include with the aim of, first of all, raising students' awareness about the language they have to develop. For that stage, I rely on some principles proposed by Dr. Randy Reppen in her approach for teaching grammar for writing in academic contexts. So although this is not the same context, I have selected and adapted some of those principles for our purposes. She proposes 12 principles, from which I have selected only 4. The first one is to identify the grammar and vocabulary resources learners need. This is not a list of grammar points or vocabulary items for sentence level practice. It has to do more with identifying what students need to accomplish the task we are going to give them. This is, in fact, what we did before when we planned the mini unit. Identify and plan. The second is to provide opportunities for guided noticing. As you know, noticing precedes learning. So in general, students only use the grammatical structures they feel more comfortable with. And instead of taking risks, they prefer to stay on the safe side, let's say. So in order to push them to use other forms, first we need to guide them towards noticing them. The third principle is to provide opportunities for meaningful communicative practice. That means that we should do something with those noticed new words and forms. We need to provide opportunities for practice. And as you may know, there are different kinds of practice. We have mechanical practice, for example. This is more controlled practice. Students can often do this without even understanding the language because the primary focus is on form. Then we have meaningful practice. Here, language control is still provided, but students need to make meaningful choices to carry out the task. And the focus is both on form and on meaning. And finally, communicative practice. Here, language is used with a wider communicative context in mind. There is a purpose, an audience, etc. And the last principle, and for me, the most important one, is to provide opportunities for students to produce stretched output. This means that we need to present tasks that require the learner to use new and more complex grammar and vocabulary. And it requires the use of certain target language forms. And these are tasks that stretch the learner's language knowledge and require a restructuring of that knowledge. For example, when you have to write a whole paragraph or a short text. So, we will see some sample activities to illustrate this process after the break. But before that, I want to end this first part of the presentation with a kind of reflection about the difference between just assigning a writing task to our students without providing them with specific tools to enhance language development, which usually ends up with poor performances and a more thorough planning of language activities that foster better writing. So we see there is a difference there. I am convinced that if we are able to make the difference if we plan our writing lessons, taking into account everything we have discussed before, identifying the target-like vocabulary and grammar students need for a specific text or task, as well as designing activities where noticing, meaningful practice, and opportunities for stretched output are provided. So we will have a short coffee break here, and we'll see those practical activities after the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And well, you will have this short coffee break, and in about 10 minutes, we will start again. Thank you, Natalia.
Okay, can you hear me? Moni, I think we can continue.
Yes, Natalia, perfect. Yes, here we are waiting for you to share all this useful information. I think we are all, well, trying to see how to go about to improve our students' writing skills, which, as you mentioned at the beginning, is an issue. And this year we have had many I don't know, questions about that and people asking us about the writing component. So
Yeah.
we are all ears. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good. Well, but so far so good. But I think I forgot something important because the title of the presentation also included how to make writing fun. This is sometimes even more difficult than integrating grammar and vocabulary into writing, don't you think? Especially nowadays. So, in order to make writing fun and somehow enjoyable, we need, of course, to motivate our students first. There is a great Cambridge webinar titled Keeping Students Motivated with Digital Learning, where Dreda Sifas explains the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation in connection with individual and situational interests. And well, for instance, we have students, a few perhaps, who really like writing, whether in Spanish or in English, but they do enjoy putting their ideas into written words. So those students will be intrinsically motivated. But we can also have some other students who perhaps don't like writing that much, but are motivated to pass the certificate. So they know that they know that they need to learn how to write in order to pass the exam. So their motivation towards writing will be more extrinsic. Something similar happens with interests when learning. Individual interests come from the inside and situational interests are external. For example, we can have students who love sports or music or cooking or whatever, and these are their individual interests. But the situational interest has to do more with the learning context we create in this case, with how engaging we make our lessons by bringing those personal interests to the class. So the presenter of that webinar says that we can't control individual interests, but we can control situational interests. Why? Because we can connect and refer to individual interests to create more engaging, enjoyable, fun lessons, which in turn contributes to enhance students' extrinsic motivation. But we need to know students' personal interests first. Once we know them, we can adapt our activities or materials to meet those interests. So once we know our students' interests, I make sure that we will all agree that two of the most valued tools to make learning more enjoyable are games and technology. And this is not new at all. There are tons of books and webinars and resources to explore those topics, but I just want to be clear in the sense that we need to remember that not all gamified activities lead to learning, and not all technologically mediated activities lead to learning. And that sometimes this is okay, as long as we know what the purpose of the game or technologically mediated activity is. We teachers are the ones who decide when to introduce a game to practice language, or when we do it as a warm-up to engage or motivate students before perhaps a more traditional activity. We also need to know that gamification and game-based learning are similar but also different things. In game-based learning, the game itself is a learning experience, whereas in gamification, the game components are added to the traditional teaching methods. So, for example, you create competitions with points, badges, levels, challenges, rewards. Game-based learning has to do more with learning while playing. Anyhow, both approaches bring benefits for teaching. Games help you create excitement, engagement and cooperation increase, curiosity and exploratory behavior are fostered, teamwork is present, etc., etc. And as regards the use of technology, the benefits for learning, of course, are countless. We all know that we have more visually engaging materials and input, more interactive tools, students activate several senses at the same time, everything is faster, more user-friendly, we have a lot of time-saving resources, students know how to use technology, so they feel comfortable with it. And now, of course, we have this new universe to discover by means of artificial intelligence and more and more and more. So all this being said, and bringing back everything we considered in the first part of the presentation, it is time now for hands-on work and see if we can put all this theory into practice. Yes. So I'm going to show you a kind of exploratory, very small scale study we carried out with a group of students who sat for first certificate last year. All the samples and activities were done before they sat for the exam, of course, as preparation for this. So first we did what we are not supposed to do. That was just to assign the writing task they had in their course books, which was to write a review about the clothes shop. Students already knew about, what a review was, the kind of information they had to include, but they didn't do any pre-writing or specific practice activity. Then I collected all the texts and analyzed the vocabulary using English Profile to focus mainly on the use of adjectives and also on the use of less common lexemes related to the topic areas included. So these are some of the adjectives I found. Let me move this because I cannot read. Great, nice, new, favorite, good, original, big, beautiful, amazing, awesome, expensive, helpful, polite, comfortable, reasonable, gorgeous. And these are the specific vocabulary items connected with the area of clothes and shopping. T-shirt, shop, clothes, clothing, place, assistant, outfit, wear, buy, quality, prices, client, sales, trousers, colors, shoes, spend money, item, store, fit, size, range of products, shopping center, brand, purchase, hoodie, white leg jeans, plus size girl. So I'm sure that you might agree that these are not less common lexis items, at least for a B2 level, except for perhaps white leg jeans or plus size girls. Regards grammar, these are some of the sentences students were able to produce. I was looking for a new T-shirt, so I went to my favorite shop, so attributive use of adjectives. The quality was amazing and the prices were awesome. This is predicative use. The shop was so big that there were like 10 assistants who were really kind and helpful. The store sells them at a much lower price. I bought the best sweater I ever seen. It was the best one in the city. The prices were a little bit higher. So we see that when we revised those, or we compare those structures with the ones expected for the level in grammar profile, we see that most of them are more typical of B1 rather than B2. We see that there are no phrases modifying nouns, there are no complex words, typical B2 forms. So after these first experiences where we could confirm that students needed to show more elaborate and varied grammar and vocabulary, we thought of giving them a new review writing assignment, but this time we would try a different approach. So we started by asking students about their interests to find an experience or an object to review that would fit their preferences more. And one of those interests was obviously music. So we also asked them about their favorite artists. So the review would be about a music concert they had attended, for which we planned the mini unit I showed you before. So I'm going to show you some possible activities to carry out, but I'm sure that while you are listening to me, you will start thinking of many, many others that you can do with your students. We only don't have to forget that if we add some elements for gamification as well as the use of technology, at least in combination with more traditional activities, it is quite likely that students' motivation will increase. So we first selected some famous songs to enjoy a little bit. I'm sure you all know these ones. And what we did was to ask students to guess the title and the artist just for fun, with the aim of creating a relaxing atmosphere before starting with the language activities. So let's see if you know those songs. I found a love for me. Darling, just dive right in. Follow my lead.
I found a girl, beautiful.
Okay, we have this one.
Tastes like strawberries on a summer evening, and it sounds just like a song. I want more berries and that summer feeling. It's so wonderful and warm.
Okay, we have this one.
Same bed, but it feels just a little bit bigger now. Our song on the radio, but it don't sound the same. When our friends talk about you, all it does is just hit me down. 'Cause my heart breaks a little when I hear your name. It all just sounds like home.
Okay, one more.
You're a sky, 'cause you're a sky.
And the last one.
So you can't sink in your golden room.
Well, I'm sure you all know those beautiful songs. So after that, we just selected some lines and we elicited responses from students to help them deduce. So this is guided noticing that even in those few songs, adjectives, for example, can take or can be part of different structures. For instance, we have, I saw you dancing in a crowded room, the adjective before the noun. You look so happy when I'm not with you, the adjective after the noun. Because you're a sky full of sky, such a heavenly view with a structure such as such a. Too young, too dumb to realize. Then we have same bed, but it feels just a little bit bigger now. I want more berries, and that summer feeling, it's so wonderful and warm. Well, I found a woman stronger than anyone I know. And you do, of course, as many activities you want in order to provide more guided noticing. Then we can move into authentic reviews. For example, this one about Harry Styles' tour, and design activities with a focus on adjective phrases to modify nouns or synonyms for words students will have to use throughout the review. For example, people, they use people, fans, but no more than that. We see that in this text. We have the word punters, which refers to people attending different events, attendees, and then we have a lot of phrases which are adjective phrases modifying the noun, such as Grammy Award-winning artist Harry Styles, or decorated from head to toe in sequins, sparkles, cowboy hats, and the coveted feather boats, punters who have been lining up. So we have this idea of showing students other variations or more varied language for those text types. So once we carry out those activities, we need to think about meaningful practice and, of course, opportunities for stretched output. For instance, you can look for or write some descriptions of artists who are famous for the way in which they dress up when performing, and a student have to guess the names or match them with the correct image. I don't know, Lady Gaga, Michael Bublé, Rihanna, etc. You can gamify the activity by adding a timer, asking students to play in teams, etc. And a good opportunity for stretched output, which will be also gamified and technologically mediated, can be to ask students to write their own description and play Gartic phone. Instead of drawing, they have to write a description according to the clue name they receive. So they can play Gartic phone, like a kind of teléfono descompuesto with their phones, by guessing which descriptions corresponds to which artist. Another one we thought of was this activity with a short review about Lollapalooza, yes, published in a teenager's magazine, with very interesting vocabulary to learn synonyms for another typical word students only use once and again, which is great. He has a great time. That was a great concert. It was a great experience, etc. So we worked with guided noticing of interesting words such as unparalleled, show-stopping, unrivaled, memorable, to replace great, amazing, or incredible. Again, we can think of many different activities for meaningful practice. For instance, you can prepare a glossary with the synonyms together with examples in a sentence. You can use them to play interactive hangman. You know, there are tons of websites which offer like templates to play interactive hangman. And you can create your own crossword clues and create interactive crosswords. In both cases, the activities are both gamified and technologically mediated. I also found those very short reviews posted on TripAdvisor. In this case, we have a collection of 30 short reviews for Lollapalooza Chicago, from which we can create activities to use both positive and negative evaluative words and phrases. Thinking about meaningful practice, we can mix up the 30 short reviews, look for some bingo cards, generators. You know that there is one which is called My Free Bingo Card or something like that, or card generator, and create your own interactive bingo with those phrases. Now, students have to paraphrase these reviews into even shorter texts. Like, for example, this person loved the show but didn't like the food service, and then they create their own bingo cards to play. And they play it, of course, with their cell phones, or if you had a projector, with a computer in the classroom. For stretched output, you can ask some students about their favorite singers and tell them to write a 5-star short review for TripAdvisor without naming the artist. And you can do the same with another group of students who have to write about artists they don't like, and they have to give them 2 stars. So one student reads, the other ones guess with or without clues according to the level, and you add gamification elements if you want to. Other useful resources are the posters. I'm sure you know how to download them from the Cambridge website. These are 3 colorful posters with phrasal verbs on the topics of entertainment, environment, and the other one is about technology. So the activity booklet includes lesson plans for vocabulary, grammar, and speaking. So in this case, we already have plenty of activities for meaningful practice ready to be used. As for opportunities of stretched output, students can design their own posters using Canva. For example, they love using Canva. But instead of phrasal verbs, they have to present idioms about feelings and emotions to describe pleasant or unpleasant experiences. Once they finish their posters in teams, they share them with the rest of the class, and many other activities can be added after that. And we can also look for spoken input rather than only texts for reading. So I found this in Spotify. We will listen to Elton John and see how, while listening, you start spotting some interesting expressions to talk about concert venues and selling. It's only 2 minutes, so we can watch it.
Hey, I'm Elton John, and this is the best advice I've ever gotten. The best advice I was given was from my agent in America, Howard Rose. Don't put yourself in a position where you're playing somewhere big too soon. Now, I got the headlines pretty quick, and I could have played bigger venues than I was playing at the start of my career. But Howard said, no, you have to go out and play second on the bill to great artists like Leon Russell and Derek and the Dominoes in areas where you're not so popular. And you have to get the experience of playing to another audience that isn't your audience. Also, when you're in places like New York and Los Angeles and you can sell out big venues, we're going to put you in smaller venues and create a ticket craziness. So you sell out straight away and no one can get a ticket. That means the next time you come around, you're going to sell out a bigger venue. If you're good and you're building your career, just take it in stages. And then when you do play big venues, you will really relish it and you'll be ready for it. Playing somewhere like that and you're not ready is a disaster waiting to happen. I've been around for a long time, 50 years, and I can tell you that's the truth. Just take it easy, know what you can do, and then build up to playing something special, but don't do it straight away.
Well, that's a beautiful, very useful place to download very, very short audio files like this, video, sorry, not audio. And it is within Spotify in a section called Spotify for Artists. So look for many, many different artists talking about music, because that's great. So, of course, what we can do is to create lesson comprehension worksheets to facilitate what? Guided noticing. First of all, comprehension, then guided noticing. In the worksheet, besides taking comprehension, we can provide definitions or explanations, and students have to write the correct word or expression while they listen. Could be with clues, without clues, according to the level or according to different groups. If you want to make it more interactive, you can create a live worksheet so that they can complete it while using their phones. A stretched output opportunity could be to ask students to write down a short interview using conditionals to give recommendations to their favorite artists. So they can record a podcast or they can act out the interview. So there would be practice in language for recommendation, which is needed for the last part of the review too. A last activity was created with this YouTube video about Coachella, a very famous music festival in the USA. Again, as we have some time, we will watch the introduction only, but I'm sure that while watching, you can think of a lot of possible activities to do with your students in order to work with vocabulary to describe, in this case, music, artists, and performances. So let's watch this.
We begin this half an hour with one of the hottest scenes in music. Thousands of people coming out for the Coachella Music Festival. As far as the lineup goes, it will include artists like Beyonce, The Weeknd, and Post Malone. Coachella has a tradition of having classic performers. Madonna's been there. Paul McCartney played Coachella.
Some of the biggest names in music, of course, Radiohead, Black Keys, many, many, many others.
I was very nervous about it, which I've never felt ever from a show. And I was trying to think about why I was, and I was like, because it's a big deal, Billy, that's why. Everybody knows what Coachella is. Even if you don't care about music, you know.
The Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival wrapped up yesterday. It's a huge concert, goes over 2 weekends. A rite of passage for any millennial is attending Coachella. This is not a rock concert. This is not Coachella.
I'd like to make an announcement that we just booked another show. We will be doing Sunday service at Coachella.
The biggest artists in the world do Coachella. So, the pressure's there to bring it.
You cannot escape it, and it became Baychella. Beyonce took it over this weekend.
You want people talking about your performance. You want to open up the paper the next day, see them talking about what you did, not what 3 acts before you did.
This morning, the most talked about concert on the planet was a weekend performance from someone who's been dead for 15 years.
You're going to be judged, man, when you hit Coachella's stage. And it's going to be talked about for the rest of the year. So you better get your shit right.
I mean, from my world, they've always been extremely welcoming. I think the programming's always been extremely progressive. They put everything on from rock or hip hop to electronic music.
Coachella has been able to facilitate a space for all of these styles of music to exist.
I played 1999, which I think was the first Coachella. I remember Paul Tollett, who's one of the guys who started Coachella, told me he had this idea of starting a festival in the middle of the desert. And it seemed like a remarkable idea, but I didn't expect it to actually work.
All right. Well, that was more or less it. There was one little part missing. Okay, so of course, you can prepare tons of activities based on videos like those, pre-lesson activities, while lesson activities, after lesson activities. But we thought of preparing questions to elicit answers in which the target language forms were used. For example, what did the presenter ask for Post Malone? And the answer would be to make some noise for him. What kind of performers are Madonna and Paul McCartney? They are classic performers. How are Radiohead and Black Keys considered? They are some of the biggest names in music. How does a TV presenter describe Coachella as the most talked about concert on the planet, and so on? Of course, you can take advantage of all the images you have in the video and practice description of artists and performances. And you can even ask your students to choose one of the artists that appear in the video and look for their performance in Coachella on the internet and write down a very short review, now getting closer to the final writing task they would have to do after that. So we can be, for ages, thinking about interesting input, authentic material from which we can design activities for language development before writing. But we will move forward so that we can finish on time. So once our students carried out some of those activities, not all of them, I have to say that there were like two from reading and 2 for listening, and that was it, of course, with games and a lot of activities in the middle. They were assigned the writing task, but this time they did it using Write and Improve. Yes. And these are some unedited sentences from their texts. So we have sentences like, Grammy winner artist Billie Eilish gave her first concert in Argentina where she sold out all the tickets. Last month, the worldwide acclaimed Symphony Orchestra Berlin Philharmonic performed at my city, and I was blessed with the opportunity to be one of the attendees. With artists dressed from head to toe in show-stopping costumes. Overall, despite not liking how the punters behaved, I do not regret attending the music festival as it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Attendees kept on laughing and singing along to Harry, creating a noisy but enjoyable melody. Also, you could feel that even the artists were having a memorable time, just like most of the fans. Also, the stage brightened up with 1,000 of pink, catchy lights, and the attendees were dressed in the most brilliant outfits I've ever seen. We see that there was improvement if we compare this kind of language with the examples we had from the closed shop review. I would like to highlight these 2 last examples here as a way of summarizing our main focus today. We have a sentence that says, I recently attended an incredible concert of Coldplay at the Monumental, one of the biggest stadiums in America. And it is interesting to notice that the same student have written, I recently bought shoes at Nike, a big shop in the Abasto shopping. So we see how little by little language has become more complex. But then I have that last example that says, luckily, the venue was spacious enough to hold that big number of punters. And we will immediately see that we have a mistake there. The correct word would be to host instead of to held. But we also see that the student used venue instead of place, for example, spacious instead of big, or punters instead of people, plus the structure adjective plus enough to correctly, which is a B2 form. So which sentence do you think shows a band 5 level? This one, which is grammatically correct, but whose language is too simple? Or this one, where the student tried harder to use less common lexemes, in spite of that, mistakes which didn't impede communication. Of course, the last one. So we can somehow confirm that careful planning and focused language practice aimed at developing more complex and varied language is important for writing. And we also need to be sure that we can even make it fun, as long as we include activities that motivate our students and take into account their personal interests. Almost finishing, something else I want to show you that you can do with using the text students write as input text to other follow-up activities. In this case, students used DALL-E, which is an artificial intelligence tool that creates images from text. So as DALL-E provides with 4 different images for the same prompt, students then had to explain which image reflected or respected all the instructions of the prompt better and why. So with those images, they created a poster and shared the final productions with the rest of the class. We have sentences like Lil Nas X even brought a giant fake horse to the stage. He wore amazing outfits and some really good songs. And these are the 4 images that DALL-E creates for that sentence. The stage brightened up with a thousand of pink catch lightning, and the attendees were dressed in the most brilliant outfits I've ever seen. Again, 4 different images. The show had everything a good performance needs: good-looking costumes, mesmerizing visual effects, fascinating dancers, and obviously a magnificent singer. So, to conclude, and as a way of wrapping up, we have presented a sequence of stages to follow or to adapt that can be used to teach any other text type from any other exam. Those steps were revising all the teaching resources we have available, then revising the assessment scales in detail. Then we decided to focus on language because we think this is the more challenging subscale. And then we analyzed that language to see in more detail what kind of structures and words our students are able to use and how to help them use better or more elaborate language. We did it by means of English profile. Then, of course, we need to narrow down the scope to choose one text and one task to design a mini unit to develop specific target-like forms. And we need to take into account, of course, students' motivation and interest, as well as include games and technologically mediated activities. We also need to provide opportunities for guided noticing, meaningful practice, and stretched output. And we can even think of follow-up activities while using the student texts as input. Finally, we know that we can adapt the proposal to teach other text types for the same exam or for other exams. And a final conclusion, and going back to our snakes and ladders board game, is that we need to remember that we cannot avoid snakes because they are part of the game, in the same way that students cannot avoid mistakes because they are part of learning. However, what we can do is to provide students with more ladders. That is, with more and better opportunities for language development so as to help them move towards the exit in spite of the snakes they can encounter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Your presentation has been excellent, and I imagine that we will all go home with lots of ideas, and more than ideas, probably to think about what you have mentioned, the use of the language, the grammar and vocabulary. I don't know if anybody has any questions before I start sharing with you some more administrative information. So if you have any questions, somebody has written that it's a pity that the video cuts all the time. Maybe when we share the presentation, maybe that will be solved. Can you stop sharing so that I can share my presentation? Thank you. Can you see my presentation? Yes. Okay, here I am. Well, any questions? Thank you very much. Great ideas. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was quite clear. So I think that there are no further questions. So once again, thank you very much, Natalia. And we will be sharing on Monday, we will be sharing an email with the link to the presentation, with a link so that you can download the certificate as well. Okay, so what's next as regards Buenos Aires Open Center for the second semester? Well, for this year and second semester. From Buenos Aires Open Center, we offer all Cambridge qualifications. And you know that all Cambridge qualifications are aligned to the Common European Framework of Reference of the Languages and also to the Cambridge English Scale. There are tests for children who are 7 to 12 years of age, pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, and A2 flyers. We have venues in different parts of the city of Buenos Aires and also in other parts of the province and in some provinces in Argentina. Then there are tests for teens, for those students who are 11 to 18 years of age. Remember that these have A2 key for schools, B1 preliminary for schools, and B2 first for schools. Remember that the certificate that children get or students get for school versions is exactly the same as the one for the traditional version. The difference is in the vocabulary, in the topics chosen. Then we also offer the tests for young adults, key, preliminary, first, advanced, and proficiency. This year, we have launched the Cambridge English Qualifications Digital. This is the preferred exam experience. The Cambridge English Qualifications Digital have come to replace what was formerly known as the computer-based. And as here it says, we're excited to announce the arrival of Cambridge English Qualifications Digital, available from levels A2 key to C2 proficiency. What are some of the digital features that will put your students in control? One of the important things is that during the listening, they will be able to they will have headphones and they will be able to control the volume. In the writing, they will have the word count, so there is no need to count the words like they do when they are doing the paper-based exam. And they will also be able to edit the text. If they make a mistake, they can copy-paste, they can erase, they can change the word. During the listening, they will also be able to write notes and to highlight the text. And the speaking, something really important, is that the speaking will remain face-to-face. So remember, Cambridge English Qualifications Digital, they will have to sit for the exam in our offices, in our venue, and the speaking will remain exactly the same, face-to-face. Benefits: fast, because results will be delivered between 5 to 10 working days. Flexible, because exam sessions will be available up to 365 days a year. If you visit our website, you will see that we are offering exam sessions every month. And in October, November, and December, we will have lots of exam sessions available for the different exams, for students to sit in our offices in Corrientes and Callao. The digital features help you to focus and to put you in control. Remember, they will have headphones, they will have the word count, they will be able to edit the text, and they will be able to highlight during the reading and to make notes. And secure, because randomized tests for increased security. This means that students sitting for the test on the same day will probably have or will have different questions, because the exam question will be powered by artificial intelligence. So not all students will have the same question. This is why we can have exam sessions up to 365 days a year, and we can also have morning and afternoon sessions of the same exam. Now, to go with digital, how do we prepare our students for these digital exams? Remember that the format of the exam is exactly the same. There is no change in the format. The only difference is that they will be sitting for the exam on the computer and they will type in their answers. So we have Test and Train, which is something produced by Cambridge. And there is Test and Train, which is class-based, and the class-based version is students can download it. It is mobile friendly, and it has a practice test experience for the students. This one will come with some of the class-based Test and Train is available with the following courses: Open World, Complete, Compact, Prepare, and Think. You need to contact your consultant, Cambridge Cambridge Press and Assessment Consultant, and they will be able to provide more information as regards the textbooks and that come with the Test and Train class base. In this case, there are only 2 tests. Now, you can also buy Test and Train self-study. What's inside this Test and Train self-study? It contains 6 sets of exam practice tests, reading and use of English, 6 sets of tasks for every part, listening also, 6 sets of tasks for every part, writing has 6 sets of questions with sample answers, and then speaking, there is 1 complete speaking test video. Test and Train is for students, not for teachers. Each student needs to buy his own access to Test and Train. There are over 500 questions across the 6 sets of exams. It will help your students to improve their performance with hints and tips. There is feedback on correct and incorrect answers. And there is also the exam day experience with tips introducing the speaking test. And you can also see the score and number of attempts. After your students purchase the login or activation code, it will be valid for 18 months. Now, we also offer multi-level tests. One of the multi-level tests is IELTS, and the other one is LinguaSkill. IELTS is the International English Language Testing System, and it is recognized by over 10,000 organizations. It is a multi-level test which tests from levels A1 to C2. There are 2 types, academic and general training, and it is valid for 2 years. We offer exam sessions at Buenos Aires Open Center, which are computer-based, but you need to register. Your students need to register with the British Council. LinguaSkill is another product from Cambridge, and it comes in 2 versions, LinguaSkill General English and LinguaSkill Business English. It is modular. There are 3 modules. 1 combined module, which is reading and listening, another module, which is writing, and another module, which is speaking. It is fast because reading and listening is from 60 to 85 minutes, writing is 45 minutes, and speaking is 15 minutes. It is convenient because it is online and on demand. Your students can sit for LinguaSkill any day and at any time of the day. There is remote monitoring, so students can sit for LinguaSkill from home, and all they need is to have a computer with internet access, headphones, and a microphone. It is fast and accurate because they will have results within 48 hours. and results are aligned to the Common European Framework and to Cambridge English Scale. And the results, the report, they will also have ID number so that they can enter results verification in the same way as any other of the Cambridge exams. Now, if you have, remember, if there are any questions, remember to type them and then I will have a look at them at the end of this presentation. Second semester 2024. We have venues in the city of Buenos Aires and what is now called AMBA, so in different parts around the city of Buenos Aires. We also have venues in Trenquelauquen, América, Pehuajó, Chacabuco, Bragado, Saladillo. So remember to contact us if your students come from any of these different cities. In San Antonio de Areco, Campana, Zárate, Mar del Plata, Pinamar, Tandil, Azul, Olavarría, Gualeguaychú, Puerto de Iguazú, Santo Tomé en Corrientes, Santa Rosa en La Pampa, Comodoro Rivadavia, Caleta Olivia, and Ushuaia. So once again, don't forget to contact us if you have students sitting in any of these cities or nearby cities. Registration for 2024, second semester registration will take place from 1st of August to 15 September. Remember that all registration are totally online. Each student or family will register their son or daughter. Payment is by Mercado Pago, and you can use a credit card or debit card. Remember that fees are published in dollars, but when students register, the system will automatically they will pay pesos automatically. They don't need to calculate how much the dollar is. That will happen automatically by this system of Mercado Pago. I know that you can probably not read what it says here, but this is all the information that candidates need to fill in when they register for an exam. Something which is really important is for you to remind your students to write the name of the institution to which they belong or the name of the private teacher, so that then we can allocate that registration to your account so that later on you can see the results of your students in your preparation center account. Why is it important to update your contact details? Well, as I was telling you, first and foremost, for you to be able to access results online. Remember that your students will get the confirmation of entry where they will have all the details to access results online. But you as an institution or as a private teacher will be able to access all your students' results online in your Cambridge English Preparation Center. You can also use the Cambridge Preparation Center logo and the BAOC logos. You will be receiving a Cambridge certificate if you enroll 100 or more students. You will get the Cambridge English newsletter, and the Cambridge English, the BAOC newsletter. How do I update my contact detail? Well, first of all, you need to log in to your account. Remember that your username is your email address, the one with which you have registered as a preparation center, the password that you created at that moment. If you can't remember your password, you can click on forgotten password and you will receive an email. Then you go to my profile, edit my profile, and you can update the contact detail. The only detail that you cannot update is your email address. If your email address has changed, please contact me or Buenos Aires Open Center, and we will tell you which are the steps to follow, how to change your email address. And another important thing is that you can add additional users. If you are working in a school or an institution and you want more than one person to have access to the results, you can add additional users. If you are not registered as a preparation center and you would like to register, please write to us. And the information that we will ask for is preparation center name, your address, including the zip code, your city, the country, contact name, contact email address, and contact telephone number. The only way that you will have access to the results, to your students' results, if you are registered as a preparation center. Another important issue is that you can download performance reports, and you can download group performance reports. There is also a user guide, and you can see how your students have, what results your students have achieved, and contrast with other students who sat for the same exam on the same day in Argentina and in other parts of the world. So really useful, these performance reports. Well, results and verifications, as I told you, you will have the results for your students, and then your students can enter results and verification service with their secret number and ID to check their result online, and they can also share this result with an employer or with a university. That's why it is so important for them to have their confirmation of entry. As I was telling you, if you are registered as a preparation center, you can also have the request the logo. What will you need? The preparation center ID. Authorized center name is Buenos Aires Open Center. You need to accept the terms and conditions and the logo user guide. Please write to me if you want to use the logo, and I will send you all this information by mail. This is the preparation center logo that you can use. This is the only logo that you can use, and this is the one for Buenos Aires Open Center. Well, I go back to confirmation of entry. Students will receive the confirmation of entry 10 days before the exam, not any sooner. So remember, about 10 days before the exam. They will have the timetable, the venue address, their ID and secret number. And here it says results information. This information is for students, not for teachers. So remember that it is very, very important for students to have their confirmation of entry and to keep the confirmation of entry, because with this information, they will be able to log into Cambridge website to see their results, and also, if necessary, to share their results with, as I was telling you, an employer or university. Well, we have our Biblioteca de Recursos, which you can visit, and you can download lots and lots of free resources to prepare your students for exams. There is also a mock test toolkit for teachers, which you can also download from our website, which I really invite you to have a look at. It is very, very useful when you are preparing your students for exams. Now, Grow with Cambridge. Now I will turn into Spanish because this is all in Spanish. Es una iniciativa de Cambridge. What has happened? Una iniciativa regional diseñada para acompañar a centros de preparación en la preparación para Cambridge English Qualifications. Hay grandes premios para las instituciones ganadoras, con invitaciones exclusivas a webinars para instituciones participantes y sus alumnos. ¿Quiénes pueden participar? Todas aquellas instituciones que preparan y registran alumnos para rendir los exámenes de Cambridge. Todas aquellas que son un Cambridge English Preparation Center y que ofrecen starters, movers, flyers, key for schools, preliminary for schools, B2 first for schools, advanced y proficiency. Que hayan registrado al menos un candidato en el año 2023. O sea, en Argentina sería de enero 2023 a diciembre 2023. Y que se hayan registrado en la web de la campaña antes de agosto 2024. Creo que vamos a poner en la página, en el chat, donde se pueden registrar para aquellos que no se han registrado. ¿Cómo se va a hacer la definición de ganadores, va a haber un sorteo en las oficinas de Cambridge en Argentina. Cuanto más registros suben, más chances de ganar. Una chance de ganar si durante el 2024 hubiesen registrado 10 alumnos o más. Dos chances de ganar si durante el 2024 hubiesen registrado entre 11 y 20 alumnos más. Y tres chances de ganar si han registrado entre 21 a 30 alumnos. Aunque ustedes no tengan un crecimiento o piensen que no van a tener, de todas formas se pueden registrar y participar de los webinars. ¿Cuáles son los premios? Cada institución va a recibir una carta de felicitación, una placa, la institución ganadora, perdón, una carta de felicitación, una placa institucional, un certificado ganador, mención en el sitio web y en redes sociales oficiales de Cambridge y una fabulosa ceremonia de entrega de premios auspiciada por Cambridge. Los docentes también van a recibir una carta de felicitación, un certificado, un set de regalos con una botella, un anotador, una lapicera, mochila, 2 cursos de capacitación online gratuitos y material pedagógico para acompañar el desarrollo personal. Los alumnos van a recibir la carta de felicitación, un set de regalos y materiales para la ceremonia de entrega de certificados, como un birrete y carpeta portacertificado. Van a recibir un mail de bienvenida. Al registrarse con recordatorio de links importantes, van a recibir una invitación a suscribirse al newsletter de Preparation Centers y una invitación a 4 webinars exclusivos. Uno de los webinars, cómo hablar de Cambridge English Qualifications a las familias, más recursos para las familias. Cómo saber si los alumnos están listos y cómo acompañar en la preparación a aquellos alumnos que todavía no estén listos. ¿Qué esperar el día del examen? Y bueno, estas fechas ya algunas ya se llevaron a cabo, como la del 4 de abril, pero la del 18 de junio todavía están a tiempo para inscribirse y poder participar. La del 17 de octubre también. Después, un webinar para familias, todo sobre Cambridge English Qualifications, que ya se llevó a cabo, pero seguramente van a volver a ofrecer más a lo largo del año. Así que bueno, los dejo. Quiero que por favor se inscriban, si no se han inscrito todavía con Grow with Cambridge. Y si tienen alguna pregunta, no sé, Mariana, si hay alguna pregunta que nos han hecho.
Por el momento no. Todos, agrego lo que decías, de los seminarios que ya pasaron, si se inscriben van a recibir las grabaciones. Así que si bien no los pudieran hacer en vivo, también los van a poder ver.
Ok. Y algo para agregar, Mariana, sobre las inscripciones, o sea, creo que más o menos cubrí todo, o sea que se van a llevar a cabo entre el 1 de agosto, el 15 de septiembre, son online.
Exacto, y en la página web, a partir del 1 de agosto, van a ver todas las fechas y como siempre también va a haber un modelo de carta para que ustedes puedan descargar y adaptar para compartir con las familias de sus instituciones. No veo ninguna pregunta en el chat, así que Moni, creo que
Sí,
cubriste.
espera que veo una de Lucia Argendegui que dice, ¿Is it compulsory to have a teacher or center account to present students? No, Lucía, no es necesario, pero sí es conveniente, porque si vos te inscribís, vos podés inscribirte como Cambridge English Preparation Center como profesora particular, y entonces ahí vos vas a poder ver luego los resultados de tus alumnos. Así que eso no es obligatorio, no es mandatory, pero sí, si querés, puedes inscribirte y nos puedes escribir a nosotros para indicarte los pasos a seguir.
Patsy Pérez pregunta si la registración de LinguaSkill es a través de BAOC y lo hace cada alumno individualmente. Sí, cuando ingresan a nuestra página web, baoc.com.ar, van a tener una sección exclusiva de LinguaSkill donde se puede hacer la inscripción. De todas formas, Patsy, si tuvieras algún grupo grande que necesita hacer una inscripción, me podés escribir a mí o a Mónica y te asesoramos de cómo hacerlo. Paula pregunta si las actividades y los recursos van a estar disponibles en la presentación. Entiendo que sí, que es lo que se les va a compartir el lunes. Patsy ahí me dijo que nos vas a escribir, buenísimo. Sí, LinguaSkill, tenés varios interesados. LinguaSkill es un examen que está creciendo muchísimo en demanda porque es un examen que se adapta mucho a las necesidades de las personas, con la flexibilidad, con el tema de ser modular. Está creciendo mucho, además de las sesiones online, vamos a ofrecer también algunas sesiones presenciales en nuestras oficinas para aquellos que quieran rendir en sede, así que cualquier cosa nos pueden escribir. Y ahora sí, Moni, creo que ya no hay más preguntas.
Bueno, quiero agradecerles a todos, muchísimas gracias por participar hoy y muchísimas gracias, Natalia. La verdad que tu presentación estuvo excelente y como dije antes, creo que nos deja a todos pensando qué podemos hacer en el aula para mejorar los resultados de nuestros alumnos. Es algo que nos vienen preguntando desde hace ya varios años, lo hemos charlado con vos y un poco, bueno, pedirte esta presentación surgió de las consultas que nos hicieron nuestros preparation centers. Así que muchísimas gracias, Nati. No sé si querés agregar algo.
No, gracias a todos por escuchar y sí, la verdad que nos pasa a todos cuando estamos preparando a nuestros candidatos para writing y vemos que todo se hace un poco más cuesta arriba, pero bueno, con pequeños cambios de a poco se pueden ir viendo mejoras y bueno, también hay que recordar que nos quedan las otras 3 subscales para revisar y para buscar propuestas y que de language solamente trabajamos la parte de complexity. También podemos seguir investigando y buscando recursos específicos para la parte de accuracy y cómo prevenir errores y cómo ayudar a los chicos con feedback, cómo hacer para que entiendan el feedback y para que eso sirva para seguir aprendiendo. Así que hay mucho más todavía por seguir trabajando en el aula particularmente, pero yo creo que si hay una buena planificación y un buen equipo docente detrás, hasta se pueden dividir tareas y compartir y todo se hace mucho más placentero. Ahí veía una de las preguntas de las chicas que decían que sí, que lleva mucho tiempo hacerlo. Sí, lo lleva, pero también es tiempo bien usado, porque si seguimos haciendo siempre lo mismo, también perdemos tiempo, entre comillas, y vemos que los resultados no mejoran. Entonces, bueno, está bueno, aunque sea time consuming, tratar de ir buscando variantes, ir buscando nuevas maneras de que los chicos se motiven en la parte de escritura y que vayan mejorando con el paso del tiempo.
Bueno,
Muchas
muchas
gracias a todos.
gracias y espero que puedan disfrutar de lo que queda del sábado y del fin de semana y que todos podamos descansar y para empezar luego el lunes. Muchas gracias a todos y en breve estaremos compartiendo también cuál es nuestro próximo evento. Así que muchas gracias y que tengan un hermoso fin de semana.
Gracias, muchas gracias a todos.